but we don't have all the answers yet. We are working diligently to get those answers for you.
Inside the waterproof bag were pictures of Brian and Gabby.
Besides the epic scale of this crime and the crime scene, spanning literally thousands of miles in multiple states, a little like the Laurie Vallow case, the Gabby Petito story is excruciating in the way that a Shakespearean tragedy is intense, agonizing, and dramatic. At the end of the day, what is the lesson? What lessons can we draw from the Gabby Petito story?
These violent delights have violent ends.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear. Thoughts build up until I can't breathe. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science. As an investigative channel who covered this case extensively in real time, when a new documentary comes out, I want to know what we didn't know at the time, what we couldn't know at the time. I want to know what we figured right and what we got wrong. I want to, in a way, hold myself accountable to what really happened. How many other channels do you know that do that and are doing that? Channels that covered this at the time as well. Are they doing the same thing? Doing a sort of inventory on their own analysis. I also want to know what new information has come to light, in particular, crime scene photos. In this analysis, we'll start by unpacking the contents of Brian's waterproof bag, then look at the photos that he took immediately after Gabby's murder, and finally, I want to briefly share an insight into Brian's disturbia, the psychological life of Brian, a glimpse into the psychological life of Brian. Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Bear in mind, in the same way that I went to the Grand Tetons, I went to Northport, I went to Bryce Canyon, Zion, the Arches National Park in Utah, as well as I actually stood where the Moab stop happened. In the same way, we get the sort of boots on the ground insight. I'm about to take a trip somewhere a little bit later, probably in April. And if you want to know more about that, I'll be posting a video in members only, giving you a sneak peek on what's to come on this channel. So look out for that. Now remember, based at the bottom of Africa, it's quite a long way to get anywhere from here. And it costs money to fly to places, to stay in hotels, to hire cars. So if you appreciate this sort of boots on the ground activity, you are more than welcome to hit the thanks button. And let's get started. So we're going to deal with 3 areas, 2 of which are covered in episode 3, the final episode in American Murder, Gabby Petito on Netflix. But the third aspect is some of my own insights. So number 1, the psychology behind the waterproof bag. What is it? What is the reason Brian took a waterproof bag into Mayakachi Park? What is the psychology?
That guy's brain is a bag full of cats.
These are the pictures found inside Brian's waterproof bag. Pictures of Brian and Gabby. Evidence of a once-upon-a-time fairy tale. Evidence of a once-upon-a-time romance. But if you think about it, isn't it odd that there were pictures inside the waterproof bag? Isn't it odd that there were pictures to begin with? When last did you have snapshots printed that you were carrying with you? That's right, most of us carry pictures on our phones. And this raises the question, what happened to Brian Laundrie's phone, the one that he had in Wyoming, the one that he was using to stage texts and steal money? What happened to Gabby's phone as well? What we do know is that with his mother's help on September 4th, Brian bought a new phone, which his lawyer insisted was not a burner phone. Did Brian take that phone with him into the wilderness? It's also odd that there was a waterproof bag. Think about it. If Brian wanted his body torn apart by wild animals, he didn't want what was in the waterproof bag to be ruined or destroyed. He wanted that to be preserved. He wanted that to be seen. This was, in a sense, his legacy. This was the story that he wanted told about himself and about Gabby. And this means he premeditated this whole aspect of the whole thing. And the staging and pageantry inside the bag is a sort of psychological mirror to the staging of the crime scene, physical and digital. And likely Brian staging and posturing himself in a manipulative way within the relationship itself. We're not going to deal in detail right here with this whole aspect, but Brian does present himself as the hero of the story, even when he kills Gabby. Now, beware of any person who is manipulative, because what that means is they know if you knew the truth, it wouldn't be enough. It wouldn't convince you. I also think when Brian committed the crime, he meant to get away with it. Otherwise, why stage anything? It was only when he realized reality was catching up with him that he made himself accountable. And he even staged, manipulated, and tried to deceive in that aspect as well. Imagine that. I'm going to hold myself accountable, but I'm going to manipulate you at the same time. Oh, well, that's not authentic accountability. And this truly shows, even when the chips were down, Brian had no sense of identity, no anchor, and was ultimately a very weak human being. And this Instagram post written by Brian actually confirms precisely this. Look at what he wrote, and I think this was alongside a picture when he got engaged to Gabby. My biggest fear is that one day I'll wake up and it will have all been a dream. And isn't that exactly what happened? His biggest fear came true, because that is what every second has felt like since the moment we found each other. In other words, a dream. And it's interesting that he says, till death do us part, or until I wake up. I'm so happy the answer was yes. Well, I think on August 27th, when Gabby said to Brian what she said to him, well, that is when he did wake up. And that is when the dream turned into a nightmare, mostly because of his own flaws and insecurities. If there is a lesson in this case, and I'd say there are several, well, one of them is that we can't go through life in a warm and fuzzy daydream, certainly not about the people we care about. Believing in fairy tales makes you divorced from reality, and that, a road paved entirely with a lack of critical thinking, that is a road to ruin, a road to nightmares.
It does not do to dwell on dreams, Harry, and forget to live.
Number 2, the psychology behind the photos from Spread Creek. What do you think it is? Something else that emerged in this documentary, something we've never seen before, are these photos taken by Brian with his phone on the morning after murdering Gabby. That was August 28th. What do you think he was doing? What do you think was going through his mind when he took these photos through the course of that morning, that day?
On the 28th, Brian had left from the Spread Creek area and had hiked up north towards the Coulter Bay camping area. Along the way, he was taking photos. Some of them were scenic, but he was also taking a lot of pictures of bones of animals that were deceased.
Why? Why was he taking photos of animal bones? I suspect there could be several reasons. One is that Brian had dark interest in dark stuff. This is something that I think he posted to his Pinterest account, the definition of nyctophilia, which is a love of darkness or night, finding relaxation or comfort in the darkness. Now, I'm not sure if that includes dark things, but it certainly is a weird fascination. And is there a dark side to this love of darkness? Well, what do you think? Well, another reason he took these photos of animal bones is plausible deniability. Seeking the coward's way out after doing what he'd just done. I think he wanted to show that he was far from Spread Creek if he was ever asked. Oh, I went for a hike and when I came back, Gabby was gone. Oh, I went for a hike. I took these photos while I was away. I took these photos because I wanted to draw certain pictures. And by showing himself handling some of these bones, some of these pictures, you can actually see him holding the bone in the photo. This could potentially explain bone or tissue fragments on his person, in his clothing, or in the van. And you may remember after disposing of his family, Chris Watts did exactly the same thing. Took photos of flowers near Survey 319. And that brings us to the third point, lullaby. This is not shown or touched on whatsoever in the Netflix series. It's the book Brian was reading during their van life trip. It's a book he even documented in not one but several of his Instagrams. If you want an intimate peek into Brian's or any person's heart and mind, look at what they are pouring into themselves each and every day. In particular, the things that they are obsessively consuming. And there are good things to sort of obsess about, such as perhaps exercise. And then there are things that are not so good, like having dark and twisted obsessions about violence. And so look at this article from The Sun, 4 signs Brian Laundrie was addicted to twisted books and chilling art before Gabby Petito's murder. And so if you want to get to know who someone really is, look at what words from which authors they're filling their hearts and minds with. It really tells you a lot. Look at, as much as this aspect is underestimated in this case, it was also, I think, underestimated in the Ramsey case. Books like Mindhunter and many others. Also, what was Rex Heuermann, the suspect in the Long Island serial killer case, what was he reading? And we know. What was he filling his heart and mind with? And we know. So this is really important. It tells you a lot. And there's a saying, I think, therefore I am. The thoughts you repeatedly fill your head with becomes who you are. This is not only a lesson from this case, it's a warning to you, to me, to everyone. Be careful what you're constantly exposing yourself to. And you need to be the gatekeeper to that, not the algorithm. And so it's not difficult to see how these twisted fictions and fantasies somehow took root in Brian's psyche and probably really haunted him and started overshadowing him when he started getting angry and having real negative thoughts in the real world. That sort of allowed a crack for all of this sludge to sort of kind of dominate his psychology. It was already there to begin with. And so when does this happen? Well, it can happen when you're emotionally compromised. All of this practice thinking and learning and patterns of negativity can eventually become almost like a default baseline if you're not careful. I mean, don't you want to decide what that baseline should be? Or do you want all of this crap that is coming into your consciousness to decide your fate? And look at the fates of these two people in this story.
These violent delights have violent ends.
Yes, they certainly do. And yes, they did. I'm not going to take it further than that. We are going to go back to the first episode and start dealing with the more subtle insights that emerged out of this documentary. Oh, and by the way, did you catch that the executive producer of this Netflix series was Dr. Phil? Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.